Hi, in this video, we are starting Chapter 0, The Foundations of Geometry. This chapter is really important because it's going to introduce you to how to name and describe various types of geometric figures. The unit goal is I can describe, name, and identify points, lines, planes, segments, and rays, and use their properties to find missing measures. In this lesson, lesson 0.1, we're going to be answering the essential question, how do you describe and name points, lines, and planes? This first lesson, lesson 0.1, is on points, lines, and planes. Again, the essential question that we're going to answer is how do you describe and name points, lines, and planes? There is a lot of vocabulary in this lesson and throughout this chapter, so feel free to pause the video to make sure that you get everything written down. Let's start with our first vocab. What is a point? The definition of a point is a location. In a picture, a point is going to be denoted with a dot and a capital letter by that dot. So if this was my picture, I would call this point A, or you can just say capital A. A line is a series of points that extends in two opposite directions and never ends. So it might look something like this. And I'm going to go ahead and put 2 points on my line. So let's call this point C and point D. And another way to illustrate a line is just by a single lowercase letter. So I'm going to put a lowercase m here. All right, so the two different ways that you can name a line are with 2 capital letters and a line with arrows above it. So this line right here, we could call line CD. And when you denote a line, you put that little arrow above it. You could also switch the order of the letters and call it line DC. Those are the same thing. The second way to name a line is just by a lowercase letter. Most of the time in diagrams, they're going to be italicized. So here we would say this is line. So you actually say the word line, and then you say that lowercase letter. So we would call this line here line M. The next word is plane. A plane is defined as a flat surface that has no thickness. In a picture, a plane is going to look like this. So there I drew a plane, and I also added 3 points on my plane, point A, point B, and point C. Sometimes planes are also named with a single capital letter, and that single capital letter will be drawn in one of the corners. So there's 4 corners to our plane. I'm going to go ahead and put it in this corner here, and that will be a capital letter. So when it comes to naming a plane, there's 2 different ways you can do that. The first is a plane and 1 capital letter, and that capital letter needs to be one of the corners of the plane. So I would not want to use plane A because A is a point. You need to pick the one that doesn't have the dot by it. So here it would be plane X. The second way to name the plane is the word plane and 3 non-collinear points. So you can see I have a point A, a point B, and a point C. So I'm going to just go plane A, B, C. And you could put those 3 points in any order that you want to. The next word that we're going to define here is collinear. And points are collinear when they lie on the same line. One good way to remember this definition is the word co actually just is a prefix that means same. So collinear are points that lie on the same line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line here. And I am going to place 3 points on my line. Let's call the points H, A, and T. So we could say that H, A, and T are collinear. So there are 3 points that are on the same line. The second word is coplanar, and if we use that same idea, you can probably guess what coplanar means. Remember, co is same, and planar is a plane. So coplanar are 2 or more points or lines that lie on the same plane. So 2 plus points or lines that lie on the same plane. For your picture, let's go ahead and draw a plane. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that goes through the plane. To do that, what you can do is you can make a point, then go up from that, and then draw a dotted line to show where it's going through the plane, and then continue it out on the other side. Then I'm going to go ahead and just add some points to my picture here. Let's say this point here is point D. Let's say there is a C, an A, and this point over here is T. So we can see that the 3 points, because 2 or more points, so I'm going to go with these 3, points C, A, and T are coplanar because they're on the same plane. Notice point D is on this line that goes through the plane. It is in a different plane. So add to your description here that D is not coplanar with the other 3 points. It is in a different plane. So now that we have all those words defined, let's try an example. Use the figure below to answer the following questions. First, are points W, Y, and X collinear? Let's go ahead and find points W, Y, and X. Remember, collinear means same line. So are the points collinear? Your answer is no. And if you want to add a quick explanation, they can't be connected with a straight line. For the next question, let's name line M in 3 different ways. You'll see that line M in the diagram is right here, and the word line M, that's already taken. So we want to name it differently in 3 different ways. Since line M is the only way to name it with that single lowercase letter, we're going to have to use some combination of 2 points that are on the line. So we could go ahead and call it line ZY. Again, I'm just picking 2 points. We could also do ZW, or we could do YW. Remember too that the order that you put the points doesn't matter. When you name a line, you just need 2 points that are on the line. So I could also call it line YZ, line WZ, or line WY. Finally, why do you think arrowheads are used when drawing a line or naming a line? Well, the reason why arrows are there is remember that a line is a series of points that extend infinitely in both directions. Lines never end. So we use those arrowheads to show that the line goes on forever in both directions. The arrowheads are used in the diagram. And remember that the arrowheads must also be used when you name the line. You always put a line with arrowheads on both sides above those 2 capital letters. Let's go ahead and look at this try now, very similar to the problem that we just looked at. I'm going to have you guys try this problem on your own using the figure below to answer the following 3 questions. There is one typo here, though, that I need to fix on my slide. Let's name a line in 2 different ways. We haven't learned about line segments yet. That's coming up in a future lesson. So go ahead and pause this video and give this problem a try. So here are the answers that I came up with as far as naming 3 collinear points. Just find 3 points that are on the same line. Also note that where the 2 lines intersect, that capital E is denoting the intersection point. So E is a point, D is a point, and C is also a point. The 3 sets of collinear points, or the 2 sets, are either E, F, C, or you can use E, P, and D. Name 3 non-collinear points. Just choose any 3 points that cannot be connected by a straight line. Your answer could vary from mine. I used E, F, and P. Finally, naming a line in 2 different ways. I went ahead and chose the line that I highlighted here in green. The way to name it with a single letter would be line L. Notice how I used a cursive L. If you do just a regular lowercase L, that looks like a 1, so we always draw a cursive L for a lowercase L. And then I also named it with any combination of points on that line, so we could do line EP, line ED, or line PD, and remember that the order of those letters doesn't matter. In example 2, let's go ahead and look at a plane. And we want to name the plane shown in 2 different ways. I'm probably going to do a few extras just to show you that there's a lot of different ways to name this plane. But note here that the R is referring to the corner. That is a point. So is S, so is T, and so is U. So when it comes to naming a plane, you name a plane using the word plane and then 3 non-collinear points. So any ordering of those 3 letters, we could call it like plane R-U-T, or we could order them differently and call it plane TSR. And again, there's so many different ways that you could do this. Let's do a few more here. How about plane URS? And that's just 3 of many different ways you can name the plane. Here is a try now. I would like you to pause the video and list 3 different names for the plane below. Ready? Pause the video. So here we go. This plane is a little bit different. It does have 4 points, just like the previous plane did. Point H, E, F, and G are all points on the plane. But notice this capital Z in one of the corners. One way we can name the plane would be plane Z, using that capital letter. The other ways we can name the plane are any combination of 3 of the points H, E, F, and G. So I use plane HGF and plane EFG. And again, your answer might vary. Before we get to our final example, there are 4 postulates that I'd like to talk about. A postulate is like a rule that is always true. So the first postulate here says through any 2 points, there is exactly 1 line. So if we have any 2 points drawn, there's only 1 possible way to draw a line that goes through those 2 points. The second postulate is if 2 lines intersect, then they intersect in exactly 1 point. And notice the word if here, that's big. If 2 lines intersect, it is possible to have 2 lines that don't intersect. Those would be parallel lines. But if our lines do intersect, they'll always intersect at exactly 1 point. So go ahead and draw 2 lines that intersect, and I'm going to make this point T. The next postulate says if 2 planes intersect, then they intersect in 1 line. Again, that word if is important. If 2 planes intersect. So I'm going to draw myself a plane just like before. And to draw an intersecting plane, this can get kind of tricky. Here's a little trick that I use. Draw a line in the middle of it that's parallel to the edges, and then just kind of go up from there, and then go out on the other side. And we can draw the dotted lines where it's kind of behind there. So there's my plane, and I'm going to make this one be plane A, and this one be plane B. And you can see how these 2 planes, they intersect right here. So that is a line. Let's go ahead and call it line L. And our final definition, or excuse me, postulate, is through any 3 non-collinear points, there is exactly 1 plane. So through any 3 non-collinear points, so any 3 points that are not on the same line, there is exactly 1 plane. So let's go ahead and just draw 3 points that don't make a line. So I'm going to call this point X, point Y, and point Z. Through those 3 points, there's only 1 possible plane that has all 3 of those points. So be sure to get these definitions and pictures drawn in your notes. Feel free to pause the video if you need to.
Okay, we're going to use what we've learned so far to help us answer these 3 true or false questions. The first question says only 2 lines can intersect at a point. Whenever you're trying to answer questions like these in geometry, the easiest strategy to start with is usually just drawing a picture. It's easier to try and envision it. So here, it's talking about 2 lines. So here's a line. Here's a line. We know they're intersecting at a point. Here's our second line. Here's the point they're intersecting at. And it says only 2. But I can pretty easily draw a third line that intersects at that point. And I could even keep going. I could draw a 4th, and even a 5th, and a 6th, and as many as I could. I could actually draw infinitely many lines through 1 point. So that answer is going to be false. The next question says you can label a line exactly 2 ways. So with a line, so here's our theoretical line, and usually we use points on the line to help us label it. So let's just add some points. Let's add A, B, and C. Well, we can label this point. We can label this line. We could name it AB. We can be careful of our notation and put the line symbol on top. We could label it BC. But we have more labels. We could do AC. And of course we can always switch all of these around. We can do BA. We can do CB. And we can do CA. So lots of ways to label this line. Definitely more than 2. And we can always do more than 2. Even if we just had 2 points, we still might have use a lowercase letter to name the line. Like often we'll call it line L. So we could always have that type of naming as well, line L. Okay, last one. Lines and planes always intersect at a point. So they can intersect at a point. We can have our plane, and then we can have a line going through our plane. Imagine a pencil stabbing through a piece of paper, and it would intersect at a point. We would have this one point where the pencil pierces the paper. But they don't always have to intersect in that way. Sometimes we could have a plane, and we could have the line in the plane, where every point on that line is an intersection. And so the whole line is a plane. So this one is also false. And we forgot to answer this one, but this one was false as well because we had so many ways to name those lines.
Let's go ahead and look at our final example. In example 3, we're going to use the figure below, and we are going to find what is the intersection of plane HGC and plane AED. With planes intersecting, it's a little bit harder to see it. So if you have like colored pencils or highlighters, it's a really helpful strategy to color the planes in. So for plane HGC, first find the points H, G, and C, and that plane that contains those 3 points is the back side of this cube shape. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in yellow. Then let's find the second plane. I'm going to highlight this one in green. We have plane AED. So again, find the 3 points. Here's A, here's E, and here's D. And we're looking for the plane that contains those 3 points. So that's kind of the left edge of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in green. Now that I've highlighted both the planes, you can see that the 2 planes intersect along this edge right here. Let's go ahead and color that red. So the intersection of 2 planes is always a line. So you can see that that is line HD. Or you could switch the order of the letters and say line DH. So coloring the 2 planes in might help you if you have a hard time visualizing which planes you're talking about. Here is a try now that uses the same idea here. What I want you to do is pause the video, go ahead and try this problem, and then when you push play, I'll have the answers up. Go ahead, pause your video. So here are the answers. The first step was just to shade plane VWX. So I found those 3 points. I highlighted them in red in the picture, and notice that's the bottom of the shape. So I colored that in green. Name a point coplanar with VWX. Remember that the word coplanar just means same plane. So the other point that is on that green plane would be point Y. Finally, let's name the planes that intersect in line WX. I highlighted line WX here in blue. So this edge corresponds with the bottom plane that we already colored in part A, so plane VWX, and it corresponds with this triangular plane here. And I just chose W, X, and Z as the order, but you could have those 3 letters in any order. So that's it for lesson 0.1. Thanks for watching. Good luck as you try some problems on your own. Bye.